Yeah.
So we'll talk here about what businesses can do, but I did want to talk kind of through that 7 stages. We'll talk about the stage where we calmed down and we said, okay, what's happened here? And like Grant mentioned, is AI is not like using matrix level supercomputing. It's doing nothing that's novel or unknown. It's just leveraging tremendous amounts of horsepower and multi-threaded processing so it can do a lot of things at the same time. And when you look at it from that standpoint and you look at what it's attacking, which is publicly known vulnerabilities and exploiting human weaknesses, basically, those are both things that we work with on a daily basis that we already have tools to combat. And so we began to develop so internally, we've been working on this now for several months to like shore up our systems and make sure that we understood how this all works. And so we're going to talk about those techniques with our staff. But I will tell you, actually, the weaponized AI, we've had new management techniques, new security techniques that we're developing that we're seeing that we know will be effective in combating it. So in this slide, the first thing it says is strong passwords and multi-factor. Absolutely the most important part of everything that we're talking about. So I had a lovely conversation with a customer yesterday about our password's dead. And I said, yeah, we say that all the time now, but they don't actually have to be. And they're a really effective method to keep people out. So strong passwords is one thing, but actually, I'll tell you what we do in our own systems and for our own security customers is we use password management systems. So it takes us to the next level. So the password management system lets you have one place to store your passwords. It will generate a unique password that's randomized per account that you need to log into. So there's no spreading across multiple systems with the same password. It will allow you to share multi-factor codes. So no one is going through and like having one person get a text message or not turning on multi-factor. And then the real power of the password management system is the ability for us to see when people aren't using it. Because that's how Grant got past these people is, have they logged into it recently? Are they watching their passwords? Are they unique? Are their passwords breached on the dark web? Literally, the system will tell you if your password is breached on the dark web, you should change it, right? That's how Grant's number one way in. And so if that's utilized, passwords can be an extremely powerful tool for protection if the right habits are put in place. And I will tell you evolutionarily, like this taught us that people don't use good tools just because it's a good tool. And so we're changing our process to help educate our customers and their staff members that, hey, you have this tool, but you're not using it. And so, like I said, this has really helped us to become even better. The next part on the slide, patch management, lifecycle management. These have been around for ages, right? So updating Windows updates on your computer, running security patches, downloading patches, these all happen very frequently. In our systems, we do this automatically for a ton of programs for our customers. And so when we kind of calmed down, we were like, oh, well, we have systems to do this. We just need to be really, really diligent and making sure that when something fails, we're aware of it and that we're on top of it. But what we realized is not all systems can be patched equally or automatically. And so that's where the gap opens up, at least for our customers. And so what we found is when devices reach a certain age of their life cycle, vendors stop providing patches. And when that happens, then the device becomes of known vulnerability, right? These are publicly known vulnerabilities. The device will never get patched, but it's still humming along beautifully and it's not broken. So we, several years ago, recognized that, and we've been working with our customers to do lifecycle management where we replace devices based on vendor recommendations. So when they're at the end of their support process for that device, we're replacing the device as well. And, they still all get our life cycles are 5 years for PCs, 7 years for engineering class computers, 7 years for servers, and 5 years for network equipment. There's still a lot of return on investment. So replacing devices that are old that can't be patched. Employee training and awareness, like this is the number one. And like I said earlier, we thought just because we trained staff members and then gave them great tools, they would use them. We're finding that's not the case. We're redeveloping our systems to make that really evident, and like we're going to start to have automation that lets owners know when staff aren't using these tools. We're going to be integrating that into our quarterly business review meetings with staff or with owners and talking about like, hey, yeah, Jimbo out on the shop floor is not logging into the password management system. We got a list that he didn't sign up for multi-factor because he said that that's where all the conspiracy theorists come through his phone, is that program. And so previously we would say, that's up to you guys. We're not here to force policy on you. But now what we're going to be doing is talking with ownership on how those individual employee decisions are now encumbering owners with risk that the owners are either unaware of or unprepared to deal with, right? So
you mean like approving multi-factor authentication to allow a hacker in?
Exactly. Like that breach, if I was to make a guesstimate, would have been probably a $150,000 to $200,000 breach by the time it was all said and done. So
easily.
That one click was a very expensive, call to action. So employee training is a huge part of things. And so Grant, I'll have you tell us a little bit about how you
level one. Sorry to interrupt there. You kind of have like level one. Now this is getting a little bit more serious.
Well, and kind of going back to you don't have to go back to the last one, but talking about the last one, most of that stuff's free, right? Multi-factor is pretty much on every systems. It may not be the some of the really integrated systems, but it's still there. Same with patch management and in employee training. A lot of that stuff's either free or really inexpensive. So that start with that. The next part is doing autonomous testing, right? Taking some of these tools, going through the network and testing and finding out if something does happen, and not if, it's actually when. You have to have a mentality of assume breach, right? Your employee is going to do something at some point, or somebody's going to get in, so you assume that's going to happen. What kind of damage happens is really a good piece of knowledge. So going through the test prior to something happening and understanding what data was it able to access, what systems did it get through, so you have the option to be able to go through and fix those problems before it ever happens.
So this, I'll just stop here for a second. This is where you have a controlled test. Basically, we're not going to go, we may look at, is there information on the dark web about your company? But then that's one thing. But this is really, hey, we're autonomous means we're going to set our AI loose on your network and see what it comes up with. Is that?
Well, yeah, because so penetration test is kind of what's the industry term for going through an exercise to see if somebody can access the network. That typically happens once a year, and that's because it's a compliance thing. And the problem is that a lot of things happen over a year. A lot of things change. And so having it only happen once a year is checking a box for compliance, but it's not really securing your network or really giving you a ton of value. Versus autonomous testing, you don't have to wait for an engagement to happen where you're waiting for a penetration test to take place. It's just running in the background, telling you in potentially, every month, every week, whatever, however often you run it, about the problems that exist at that moment in time, so you can address them quickly versus waiting for the next year for an auditor to come in and tell you that, you get your hand slapped because there's some controls that aren't functioning properly.
And so this is kind of like opening up the bedroom door of the teenager and going, "Is your room clean? Okay, it's clean." Or, yeah, I have a teenager, so I don't know.
Yeah. Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So Tony, before we move off from that autonomous testing, so this is actually something that has emerged out of this process for us. Because like a traditional penetration audit that you would do, like say Grant says, annually. And what we realized is you don't have the luxury of waiting to find a vulnerability a year later. You need to be scanning constantly. So for us, we're actually engaging the weaponized AI vendor, and it's becoming part of our advanced managed security solution, so that those customers that are on V2 of that solution are constantly being scanned by this tool, and we're catching stuff right away. So like, if a vulnerability opens up, we're finding it within the next day versus a year later.
So to use my analogy, it's like I get a notice on my phone that says, "Oh, he dropped a piece of paper on the floor." My teenager, his room's getting dirty.
Exactly.
So continuously doing that.
Yeah.
But for us, it's even better for our customers because we go pick up the paper for them, and they don't get the alarm. We just go fix it. So
Right. Right. Well, you bring up an interesting point there too, because on one weird way, if your clients' networks were broken into or hacked, you'd actually make more money by cleaning, by having to go fix it all, rather than being, have a way to maintain
Well,
visibility on it.
so I guess that's where I come from. The other side of it is that in some of these cases, if a client gets hit hard enough, they're not a client anymore. They're out of business. And so I guess coming from the selfish side, I'm like, I like to keep my clients. And so because that's what provides revenue, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, making money on incident response, that's kind of like, it's not something you're looking to do. It's not a large part of my revenue model. However, supporting clients is, and so
Yeah.
no client, no business. So
Yeah.
that's my selfish side of it.
Well,
Um,
and you guys have the what I like to call keep it clean gene.
yeah,
Getting things messy is not in your culture of
no.
your business. So I get what you're saying
we're
too.
too Norwegian for that.
But yeah, so
So
like backups. So going along with the mentality of assume breach. So backups, backups, right? You have backups in the spot where you have your local, you have your cloud version, they're air gapped. So even if something does happen locally, you can always recover. So that's primary. One of the things that cybersecurity insurance people don't really think about is that even if you do like, oh great, I've got cybersecurity insurance, I don't have to worry about the rest of the controls. And the problem is that your company is going to be down during the time of recovery. And so you want to be able to make sure that insurance policy is in place to be able to help offset the revenue loss that you may incur. And also, any sort of bad PR that might take place. There's a lot of things that need to be in place. If you go along the whole path of assuming breach, you kind of want to have every box checked, right? And so it's just like a security control. You have layers and layers and layers, and cybersecurity insurance being the last thing that you want to use, but it's a definite necessary evil.
so when you say assumed breach, you mean knowing what's going to happen if a breach occurs. What
No,
do
no, even more, just assuming that it's going to happen to you. If you assume that it's going to happen to you and you're able to prepare for it, then the damage that's done is much less, it's insignificant compared to kind of sticking your head in the sand and saying, okay, maybe it's not, this won't happen to me. I don't have any, credit
right?
cards or personal data. I'm like, guess what, people? They're going after your payroll. They're going after your transaction with your vendors. If you have a business that has money, that's what their target is. It's not, nobody cares about credit card numbers or social security numbers anymore. It's pennies on the dollar in the dark web. So,
Interesting.
and this doesn't happen overnight, right? This takes time. There's a lot of companies that this might be years, but you just get a reasonable plan in place. You take some steps forward, and you get buy off from ownership and management, and saying we need to do these things over a period of time, set some goals, and start doing some of the things. I mean, it's not, you don't have to fix it all tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way, but you just have to get a plan in place and start moving forward on it.
So if you're not doing anything now, do a little bit. And if you're doing a little bit, do a little bit more.
Start somewhere.